Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for that introduction. When I hear that introduction, it always makes me feel about 90 years old. And good morning. I know what a lot of you are thinking. Geez, the regulator is here. He's probably going to say that he's here to help. And you laugh, but I get it. You know, there's a certain degree of skepticism when the Fed shows up at an event like this. And I don't know that I blame you. After all, the old government philosophy of, if it ain't broke, let's fix it anyway, can be the ultimate buzzkill. Well, that's not who I am, and that's absolutely not what the Department of Transportation or this administration is all about. Believe it or not, we all want the same thing. We all know unmanned aircraft aren't a novelty, some expensive toy that needs to be accommodated. And we're ready for the day when drones are a fully integrated, everyday player in our nation's airspace. So how do we make that happen safely and faster? Well, to start with, we all need to acknowledge remotely piloted aircraft are a disruptive technology. In this room, that's almost always a good thing, right? Drones are reinventing industries, creating new ones. They're going to do for aviation what the internet did for information. Now, as you heard, I've been a pilot most of my life. But when I look around at some of the things you're working on here at InterDrone, the possibilities just blow me away. But, you know, as exciting as all of this is, it can make people nervous, let's be honest. Safety, security, access, privacy. The public has very real and justified questions about drones, and their concerns can't just be swept under the rug. If we want this technology to take hold, we've got to take these questions head on. Opinions about drones are still being formed, and that's in all of your favor. And we can make the most of that opportunity by being responsive. Now, the recent event in Venezuela reminds us all it takes is one bad actor, one unfortunate incident, and this industry could be grounded before it ever really takes off. That's not hyperbole. Sky-high expectations are just part of the world you're operating in. The National Airspace System doesn't have room for error. When something goes wrong up there, it shakes people's confidence down here, and the entire industry feels the impact. Now, fortunately, incidents like Venezuela are extremely rare. Airplanes, aircraft are safer and more resilient today than at any other time in history. The people operating in the system take safety so seriously that they self-report mistakes. And that voluntary data reporting allows us to root out areas of risk in the system long before the incidents occur. The result? Aviation is the gold standard, the safest form of transportation in the world. That's not a position we're about to take a step back on. Now, I've heard this argument a few times. Dan, back in Orville and Wilbur's era, people were willing to risk their lives for the birth of a new form of transportation. Now that we're on the cusp of aviation's next great era, shouldn't we be willing to accept some of the same risks in the name of progress? Well, folks, there's a really simple answer to that question. No. Manned aviation already learned those lessons. We paid that price. We're not going to do it again. And the public wouldn't let us anyway. Now, this insistence on safety isn't some limitation on unmanned aircraft. On the contrary, I think it's a leg up. Because you're not starting from scratch like the Wright brothers. The FAA has spent 6 decades working with airlines, manufacturers, and countless others to get where we are now. And we're ready to use everything we've learned so that the drone industry can reach its full potential as quickly as possible. Now, let me tell you a quick story. A TV company was using a drone to film exteriors out in Louisville, Kentucky, a couple weeks ago. It just so happened they set up in the parking lot of the FAA's local flight standards office. Yeah. True story. Now, our folks naturally got curious about the drone flying in their parking lot and struck up a conversation with the production manager. Turns out, an uncertified pilot was flying an unregistered drone. So, well, what do you think the inspector did? Confiscate the drone, issue a fine, right? Not exactly. Our guys didn't write them a ticket or start talking about fines. They sat down with them and helped register their drone right there in the FAA's conference room. Walked them through the rules and next steps. The crew couldn't believe it, that we wanted to help them get back to filming the right way as quickly as possible. You know, if there's one thing I want all of you to leave here with, to go back and tell your friends after this conference, it's this: the FAA is open for business. Our folks, for folks who are committed to doing the right thing, we're not your adversary. We are as invested in integrating unmanned aircraft into the system as you are, believe me. Innovation is one of Secretary Chao's top 3 priorities for the Department of Transportation, along with safety and infrastructure. And we're building flexible, responsive regulatory processes that can keep up with all your creativity while ensuring safety isn't compromised. Now, we've automated how drone operators get permission to fly in controlled airspace. We're laying the groundwork for a comprehensive unmanned traffic management system. We've authorized low-risk small drone flights and created a performance-based waiver and exemption process to allow more advanced operations. And Secretary Chao recently launched a presidential initiative called the UAS Integration Pilot Program to let us work with local governments and private industry to figure out how best to expand unmanned operations beyond what's allowed by current regulations. Now, that's a cabinet-level official leaning in and saying, let's move our efforts into the fast lane. The first test under the pilot program happened a few weeks ago in Blacksburg, Virginia. A Project Wing drone, you probably read about it, delivered a popsicle to a 2-year-old boy just 6 minutes after the order was placed. And it was historic. The first beyond visual line of sight residential drone delivery in the United States. It was the Mr. Watson, I want to see you for the 21st century. But to little Jack, it was just cool. In his words, "Mommy, airplane brought me popsicle." Now, these are important steps forward, steps that bring drones closer to just being a routine operator in our airspace. But there are still critical hurdles that need to be cleared before that's a reality. And they are issues the FAA cannot tackle alone. Everyone's interested in drone operations at night and over people. But we need to address the concerns that our national security and law enforcement partners have first. Chief among them, We, and that's a collective we, not just the FAA, have to be able to identify every drone in the airspace and who's operating it. The National Airspace System is no place for hide and seek. And this is common sense stuff. No one's okay with the idea of people driving down the highway without a ticket in their pocket and a tag on their vehicle. And why should operating a drone be any different? But right now, the FAA's hands are tied by a law that says we cannot require remote ID on model aircraft. This is not a sustainable situation. Until we can set remote ID requirements that will be universally applied to every drone, until we can make sure everyone is following the same rules inside the system, full integration just isn't possible. Now, Congress knows this is an issue, and I'm hopeful we'll see a legislative fix soon, maybe even as part of the FAA's next reauthorization that they're working on right now. As soon as this gets resolved, rest assured, we're ready to move forward as quickly as possible. And that's not the only question hanging out there. How are drones going to interact with each other and with other users flying in the system? How can we make sure unmanned aircraft don't interfere with critical infrastructure or emergency response efforts? Remember dull, dirty, and dangerous? And drones shouldn't be impediments. They should be first responders at events like California wildfires. That's what we should be working toward. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and claim that I've got all the answers. I certainly don't. I'm not a tech guy, and the FAA is not a tech company. Our business is safety. So when we look at an aircraft, we want to know two basic things. Is it reliable, and does it play nicely with others? That's it. Don't fall out of the sky, and don't crash into other aircraft. It sounds simple, but you all know the execution can be a lot more complex, especially when it's an entirely new class of users coming into a system that already includes jumbo jets, helicopters, balloons, rockets, and everything in between. So that means we need buy-in from all of you. The innovators, the inventors, the out-of-the-box thinkers. Nobody knows how to tackle tough tech challenges better than the folks in this room. And that's what got you here. The advancements being highlighted this week are proof of that. So, here's my advice. If you share the FAA's goal of fully integrating drones into our airspace as soon as possible, don't just make the business case for your products or operations. Start making the safety case, because they go hand in hand. And don't be afraid to take on the problems that are bigger than your individual companies. Go after the issues that are affecting the unmanned aircraft community writ large, and share what you're doing at events like this in the world of safety. Because, I truly believe you're going to find the most success more quickly if you work together. Now, some of you are already doing this, and it's probably the single biggest lesson we've learned over the years in aviation safety. If a company develops a new safety enhancement in legacy aviation, they don't keep it to themselves or use it to sell more aircraft than the other guy. They share it with everybody else. Over 20 years ago, the FAA actually put together a team specifically designed to share safety information and then do something with the safety information that's being shared. It's called CAST, the Commercial Aviation Safety Team. It's a mix of safety professionals from industry and government, a group of about 1,000 that shares data and safety ideas. In a world where it's hard enough to get two people to agree on anything, this group is a stark exception to the rule. CAST is responsible for implementing about 200 safety enhancements that are largely responsible for commercial aviation's historic safety record. And one more thing you need to know about these safety enhancements: they're voluntary. This industry, aviation, doesn't wait for a rule or a government mandate or a call to action. Safety is a race we run together, and CAST wants everyone in the system to finish in a tie for first. And that, I say with a great amount of awe and not a little bit of pride, is what happens. That's why we went over 9 years without a single fatality in commercial aviation. Safety is not a table for one. And all of this is not just for the big guys, the airlines, the manufacturers who dominate the system. It's about general aviation as well. The private pilots. And for them, we formed the General Aviation Joint Safety Committee for the same purpose. And I'm really glad to say, in October 2016, we launched a similar effort designed just for this community, the Unmanned Aircraft Safety Team. And given the success that we've seen with CAST and the growing success we're seeing with the general aviation community, I have no doubt that in time, we'll see more of the same in your community. It sounds strange and maybe even a little weird, but the concept works, and the numbers prove it. And I know you guard your trade secrets and proprietary technologies as well you should. We're not looking for the keys to the cabinet that holds your secret plans, but we do want to know about safety mistakes that can end in tragedy. And that's the thing about sharing this kind of information. We can't spot trends if the cards aren't face up on the table. You know, what you think is a fluke, a 1 in a million, an event that will never happen again, might very well be happening on this coast, that coast, and a number of locations in between. But we won't know that, and you won't know that, unless we have a system to share the information. But this is the reason for aviation's unprecedented record. We don't compete on safety. That's the business we're in. Now it's your business too. And I'm really happy to welcome you into the fold. You know, for the last few years at events like this, we've had a tendency to spend, in my opinion, a little too much time just kind of reassuring each other. Industry tells the FAA what drones are capable of, and what you're doing isn't some kind of fad. And guys like me come here and tell you we get it, we're on top of it. I think it's time we end the therapy sessions. You've proven that unmanned aircraft are here to stay. And I hope, the FAA has proven we're 100% committed to making you a regular part of our national airspace. Now look, we're certainly not strangers anymore. We're partners in innovation and safety. And this is more than a work in progress. This is a success story in the making. I'm confident of that. And you are giving me all the reasons in the world to keep it that way. So thank you very much.